Good evening. Our top stories tonight: CJ Gardner-Johnson is a Detroit Lion. Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell making money moves, making big splashes in free agency, fixing up that defense. Arguably one of the best signings of the offseason. But was it the best? Was it even the best at safety? We've got all that and much, much more on Player Profiler today. So I am, of course, not live right now, but that is okay. We are still going to be bringing you lots of news, and we're going to be recapping some of the stuff that has already happened throughout this offseason. Because let's be honest, free agency is a wild time. It is a busy time. Everyone is struggling to keep up with every single move. How do you know what's good? How do you know what's bad? That is what Player Profiler today is here to bring you, starting with quarterback. Quarterback, the best move of the offseason at quarterback has to be Geno Smith, right? I mean, 3 years, $25 million a year. They're only committed to Geno Smith for 1 year. It's $27 million guaranteed. That's barely more than a year's salary. They can move on from Geno Smith at any point if they want to. They can draft a rookie quarterback this year, or they could ride it out. Because Geno Smith, at most, he'll be making $105 million total. That is $35 million a year. That is a bargain for the football that we saw Geno Smith play just last year. At $35 million, getting Pro Bowl level play from your quarterback in Geno Smith, amazing, truly amazing. You cannot beat that value. So Geno Smith, absolutely the best deal at quarterback we have seen this offseason. Honorable mention to Mike White. Mike White as the backup quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. He is set to make $8 million over 2 years, $4 million per season, but that can jump to $8 million per season with incentives, $16 million total deal up for grabs for Mike White. And this was a great move by the Miami Dolphins. They pay Mike White backup money, but if Mike White steps in, they now have a competent backup. Teddy Bridgewater, as our friend Matty Kiwoom said, he was just as much a risk to be injured as Tua was. Teddy Bridgewater, not the sturdy backup that they needed with Tua and his concussion issues. Now you get Mike White, backup quarterback, and he can step in and win a couple games for the Miami Dolphins. They're not going to go, what was it, 0-5, 0-6 with Tua out. Not going to happen with Mike White. He is good enough to keep this team coasting. And the worst move at quarterback, got to be Derek Carr, right? A lot of people probably thinking, well, Daniel Jones, he's making $40 million a year. Yeah, but Giants have a lot of money to spend. And Daniel Jones, he could play up to that contract. He could be worth a lot more. The Giants build around Daniel Jones. It could work out. With the Saints, it's not going to work out through any fault of Derek Carr. But $37.5 million per year, that puts him in the second tier of quarterback. But this is not a roster that's going to win with a second tier of quarterback. It's just not. The Saints, for years, year after year after year, they kick the salary cap can down the road. They're still acting like this is a win now roster with Drew Brees under center. At the end of Drew Brees' career, it wasn't even really a win now roster. I guess it still was then, but it was at the end of it. They missed their window and they were just hanging on. And now they're hanging on to nothing. So Derek Carr, not his fault. $37.5 million a year for over 3 years, $60 million guaranteed. That's just 2 years of salary guaranteed. That's all well and good for Derek Carr. That's fine value. I'm not criticizing Derek Carr's contract in monetary value. I'm criticizing it with the Saints. If the Jets signed Derek Carr to that deal, fine. This is a Super Bowl roster. Derek Carr, I don't know if he's the quarterback to get them to the Super Bowl, but at least I understand it. Don't understand the New Orleans Saints signing Derek Carr. I just don't. And I also don't understand the Las Vegas Raiders franchise tagging Josh Jacobs, commanding $10 million this year. In general, I don't love franchise tagging running backs. I don't love the Dallas Cowboys franchise tag Tony Pollard, but this is a win now team. Dallas Cowboys, after trading for Brandon Cooks, This offense is explosive. This is a Super Bowl caliber offense with a Super Bowl caliber defense to pair with it. Not so much with the Las Vegas Raiders. This is another one. I don't hate these contracts for these players. Josh Jacobs, absolutely worth $10 million per year. But when you don't have an offensive line, when you don't have a defense, when you don't have the supporting cast to help Josh Jacobs, this is where the problem lies. This is when running back contracts go bad. See, Saquon Barkley, $10 million, totally fine with that. Giants, not quite a win now team, but it would be a real shame for them to have lost Saquon Barkley. They're still a young building team. So I get it. I get the Cowboys franchise tag Tony Pollard again, win now team, the Raiders. You got a lot of work to do. You're just pretending that you're relevant, pretending that you've got a shot to save Josh McDaniels' job when you really don't. So that's why Josh Jacobs, worst move at running back this offseason through no fault of Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs deserves the $10 million. The Raiders just don't make sense to be doing it. You add a running back of this caliber as a finishing piece or a team where you just have to pay someone. The Panthers had to pay someone, so they paid Christian McCaffrey. And then he goes to the 49ers, and this is a win now team. Miles Sanders, he can make $6.25 million. Josh Jacobs is better than Miles Sanders. He's better than David Montgomery making $6 million, but $4 million a year for a team that's not competing? Don't get it. Don't understand the Las Vegas Raiders with Josh Jacobs. Deserves the money. Just why? Why are you spending on a running back when you aren't competing? As for the Miami Dolphins, they have the best move at running back because they are competing. But part of the reason they're competing is they've got the studs and the duds. Now, I am not by any means calling these running back studs. Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert. No, they are quality running backs in the NFL. They are above average starters, which is why it is such a great deal for the Dolphins because these are veteran players. These are aging guys. They've had their injury history, especially Raheem Mostert, but these are guys that are worth the contracts they're on. $3 million per year for Jeff Wilson. It's a 2-year, $6 million deal. And he can make up to $8.5 million. Steal for Jeff Wilson in terms of what he offers you as a legitimate starting running back when he's called upon. Great goal line back. He can catch the ball out of the backfield in this Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan one-cut system where they just chew up and spit out running backs. When you can get a starter like Jeff Wilson for $3 million and pair him with a starter like Raheem Mostert for $2.8 million, $2.9 million, whatever it is Raheem Mostert's making, it's not enough. He's making $5.6 million over 2 years. Mostert can make up to $7 million. And this is a starting caliber running back who just played in every game for the Miami Dolphins. Now I get why Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson aren't breaking the bank. I understand that. They're aging running backs. It's a buyer's market at running back. But just a savvy move by the Miami Dolphins to not spend up, to not invest big at running back, to go cheap there. You get 2 starters. You get Savon Ahmed back. You get Myles Gaskin back. Both of those guys can contribute if you need them to. And you've still got the freedom to add a running back in the draft. It doesn't preclude you from that. Great move by the Miami Dolphins in the backfield. Great move by the Chicago Bears at wide receiver. Because DJ Moore, far and away better than any wide receiver that was available on the open market. Now, there's questions, Jackson Smith and Jigba versus DJ Moore. I'll leave that up to you, but either way, there's maybe one wide receiver more talented than DJ Moore available, period, and that's in the draft. And are you drafting JSN that high at first overall? No, you weren't. So you trade back with the Chicago Bears. You get the best wide receiver that you possibly can, the best wide receiver available. There is no one better than DJ Moore out there that you can get as the Chicago Bears. So you do it. And we heard what the price tag was for the Raiders to trade up. It was 3 first-round picks and 2 seconds. What do the Panthers give up? They give up 2 first-round picks, 2 seconds, and DJ Moore. DJ Moore counts as a first-round pick, and it is easy to see why. DJ Moore, he is a wide receiver 1. He is an alpha for Justin Fields to grow with. Now, unfortunately, he's not going to be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy because this is a lower volume passing offense. But in terms of real life football, DJ Moore is going to do for Justin Fields what A.J. Brown just did for Jalen Hurts. He's going to give him a steady, reliable option that he can trust and hit over and over and is always going to be open, who can adjust when Justin Fields is scrambling around, making plays. Perfect decision by the Chicago Bears. And it just shows us that the Bears believe in Justin Fields, and this is going to be a long-term affair between Fields and DJ Moore. And the Bears are back, baby. But we also have honorable mention, Jacoby Myers, 3 years, $33 million, $11 million a year for Jacoby Myers, who is a pseudo wide receiver 1. He's a 1B. He is a Christian Kirk type wide receiver, but Christian Kirk making $18 million per year. Jacoby Myers making $11 million. Whew, that market dropped off steep. Didn't see that coming. I thought Jacoby Myers, 15 to 20 million as the alpha on the market. No, absolute bargain for the Las Vegas Raiders signing Jacoby Myers. Now, it doesn't make a ton of sense because he does the same thing as Hunter Renfrow and Josh McDaniels' egos. Just, well, got to get my players. But hey, I still like the signing in a vacuum. It is great value no matter what. We'll see what happens with Renfrow, but well done. Honorable mention. The worst signing is a contract that goes for the exact same as Jacoby Myers. Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard making $11 million per year over 3 years. That one I don't get. He gets 2 years guaranteed. And Allen Lazard, you're saying you'd rather have him than Juju Smith-Schuster? You're saying you'd rather have Allen Lazard than Paris Campbell? In a vacuum, yeah, I get it. You'd rather have Allen Lazard, best ability is availability, whatever NFL teams say. But Lazard's making $11 million per. Paris Campbell's making 4.7. Juju Smith-Schuster's making $8.5 million with the potential to make $11 million. And Juju's a better wide receiver than Allen Lazard. I know he's had his struggles. I know he's had his injuries too, but Juju over Allen Lazard for sure. This is the Aaron Rodgers tax that the Jets paid for Allen Lazard. And it's not a devastatingly bad signing. They're really, being honest, this year has been great. There haven't been any critically horrible signings that we've seen yet. All of these worst signings are just, that wasn't the best decision by you as a franchise, but it's not devastating unless you're the Saints just holding on, but eventually you'll crumble and you'll realize. But Allen Lazard, it's still a solid signing. He's a good blocker. He'll help the run game. He'll contribute. He'll be a starter, but it's the Aaron Rodgers tax that you paid for Allen Lazard and you overpaid. But we're going to go back to the Chicago Bears for the best deal at tight end, best deal at wide receiver, best decision at wide receiver, and the best deal at tight end as well. Robert Tonyan, 1 year, $2.65 million for Robert Tonyan. That is crazy. I know he dropped off after the ACL tear, but Robert Tonyan once caught 11 touchdowns just back in 2020. Crazy. Then he tears his ACL, only plays 8 games, 2 touchdowns, and then comes back, only 2 touchdowns last year, part-time player. But Robert Tonyan is a quality tight end 1B. He can be a tight end 1-ish, not in fantasy. Well, depends on what you mean in fantasy, because top 12 is tight end 1 in fantasy, but that's not it. Regardless, Robert Tonyan is a quality starting tight end in the NFL. He is a solid blocker. He is a solid pass catcher. He's nothing spectacular, but less than $3 million for a starting quality tight end to pair with Cole Kmet. And you now have the freedom to do more jumbo sets. You have the freedom to work more with 12 personnel, 2 tight ends on the field. You get Cole Kmet and Robert Tonyan on the field at the same time. You flex Robert Tonyan out. You move Cole Kmet around. Yeah, you go, what about the heavy sets? When they go heavy sets with 3 tight ends with Chase Claypool on the field too. This was a good decision by the Chicago Bears. A cheap, no risk signing for Robert Tonyan. Reunite him with Luke Getsy, who was the quarterback coach in Green Bay when he was there. Great signing. On the other hand, we stay in the NFC North. The worst signing at tight end was Josh Oliver to the Minnesota Vikings. 3 years, $21 million. So this is a $7 million a year deal for a blocking tight end 2 behind TJ Hawkinson. That's the plan. This one doesn't add up to me because Chris Manhertz, a better blocking tight end for the Jacksonville Jaguars, he gets $6 million over 2 years. That's less than you're paying Josh Oliver this year. That's less than the guaranteed money that Josh Oliver got with the Minnesota Vikings. So I would say Josh Oliver to the Minnesota Vikings is the worst deal I've seen in free agency. And when that's the worst deal, a 3-year, $21 million deal for a tight end is the worst deal of free agency, it's a pretty good free agent signing class. Teams aren't making mistakes like they used to. Teams aren't going out and giving Albert Hainsworth a $100 million contract. That's not happening anymore. Kudos to NFL GMs. Sorry, Josh Oliver, to have to highlight you this way. You're a great blocker. You're a fine tight end. Nice to see you pull it together with the Baltimore Ravens, but you're making $7 million and Robert Tonyan's not making $3 million, and it's a 1 year for Tonyan and you get 3 years. It doesn't add up to me. I'm sorry, but just doesn't make sense. Now, moving over to offensive line, I really don't think there's a worse move when it comes to offensive linemen. I considered giving this to Mike McGlinchey, the right tackle signing for the Denver Broncos, because he took a step back and he's getting older, but I can't fault anyone, any team, for spending up at offensive line. Mike McGlinchey has shown flashes of being worth that in the past. The Denver Broncos needed to upgrade the offensive line to help Russell Wilson. Billy Turner wasn't getting it done when he played, and the other cast that they had playing as well just didn't get it done at right tackle. So I can't fault the Denver Broncos. I'm not going to say there's a worse move at offensive line because offensive line is just that crucial, that vital. So you spend up on offensive linemen. Oh, well. The best move, though, there's 2. And I don't know if I want to say making the highest paid left tackle in the NFL is the best move, but tip of that cap to Laramie Tunsil, $25 million a year to play left tackle for the Houston Texans. That's just, man deserves it. I can't say it's the best move because paying a player at the top of their position, that we're talking about value, doesn't scream value, but you get what I mean. Great decision, needed decision, got to highlight it. But the best move of offensive line and free agency so far is the one the Dallas Cowboys didn't have to make. Being able to bring back Tyron Smith, not having to cut the all-pro, all-world tackle, that was a huge win. Reducing his salary from $13 million to $6 million, that's a steal. If Tyron Smith barely plays for you and he makes $6 million this year, that is a win. But he's got the potential to make up to $15 million with incentives, which is a boost from what he was supposed to make originally. So he takes this pay cut with the fact that I can make more in total with incentives, and I believe in myself that I'm going to hit all these incentives. But even then, if Tyron Smith hits all of his incentives and you're paying him $15 million, that's a steal in itself. Tyron Smith is still an all-pro caliber tackle, whether he's left tackle, whether he's right tackle. Dallas Cowboys getting Tyron Smith back, absolute W, absolute win. I am a huge fan of what the Dallas Cowboys have done this offseason and will continue to do. Brandon Cooks, a trade we'll get to later. That isn't the Brandon Cooks trade. Foreshadowing. But love what the Dallas Cowboys are doing. Love the restructure for Tyron Smith. And at defensive tackle, again, I can't say there's a worst move at defensive tackle. There's nothing I even want to point to and say this could be a contender like Mike McGlinchey. No, the defensive tackle market, yeah, it is crazy. It's insane that some of these guys are getting $20 million. The fact that the 49ers are getting $21 million to Javon Hargrave, crazy. But hey, what can you do? These interior pass rushers, they are dominant. They are taking over games lately. They are. Here's the thing when it comes to the NFL. Guys of this caliber, Javon Hargrave and the like, Draymond Jones, they've rarely hit free agency, just open market, this type of impact playmaker. So the fact that the defensive tackle market is just going up, the fact that Daron Payne doesn't even hit free agency and makes it the big bucks, it's just, you gotta pay for this type of player. People who are that large and can move the way Daron Payne can move, they don't come around too often. You gotta sign them. However, the best move, I will say, at defensive tackle, Larry Ogunjobi back to the Pittsburgh Steelers, $9.5 million a year over 3 years. All these other guys, they're getting 15, 20, 15, 18, 17, $20 million at defensive tackle, $21 million for Javon Hargrave. And Larry Ogunjobi making under 10. Another quality starter. And I know he's getting up there in age, but you get Larry Ogunjobi and Cam Hayward together on the defensive line, you're set there. You've got more depth. Kudos to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Also built in their offensive line this offseason. Just a well-run organization. And much like I can't say there's a worse move at defensive tackle, I can't do it for defensive end either. Paying players that can impact the quarterback on the defensive line, whether it's interior rush, whether it's the edge rush, I can't fault you for paying those players. I can't fault you for paying offensive linemen, defensive linemen. This is something Player Profiler believes in. You get the trenches right. You build out from the trenches. And I can't fault any of these edge moves. So there's no worst move in the trenches for any team. But there's a best move at edge, and that is the Philadelphia Eagles bringing back Brandon Graham. $5 million. There's incentives, and he can make more than that, but $5 million for Brandon Graham, who just came off an Achilles tear. And somehow, there's a couple crazy parts to this. Number one, it's insane that Brandon Graham, until 2022, had never had a double-digit sack season, considering how dominant he has been for years. It's also insane that the first season he has double-digit sacks is coming off an Achilles tear. So Brandon Graham, he's still got it. He's going to be in a situational pass rush role behind Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick. And $5 million for him is just a damn steal. Moving over to linebacker. This is a position that doesn't impact the quarterback as much. Linebacker in the NFL is not what it used to be. Ray Lewis isn't changing the game anymore. Because back when Ray Lewis was the guy, back when he was the superstar on defense, you could do things and make hits that are not legal in the NFL anymore. You had Ray Lewis back there patrolling the middle of the field. People were afraid to go over the middle. You couldn't call a drag route the way you can today because Ray Lewis would knock their block off. That doesn't happen anymore. And so linebacker is just different. It doesn't impact things the way it used to. So for that reason, Tremaine Edmonds, $18 million a year, I got to call that the worst decision at linebacker. And it's because of the value that we found elsewhere. Everyone else was getting $7 million a year or less. Jermaine Pratt, under $7 million a year to start for the Cincinnati Bengals. Eric Kendricks, under $7 million a year to start for the Los Angeles Chargers. Alex Anzalone, under $7 million a year to start for the Detroit Lions. Quincy Williams, $6 million. Kaiser White, $5 million. Leighton Vander Esch, $4 million. And Tremaine Edmonds is better than all of these players, and he is young and he still has the potential to continue to grow. But when all of these talented linebackers are making a quarter of what one linebacker is, you can get two of these guys and be rock solid up the middle for the price of one with the Chicago Bears. And I get it. The Bears are a team that's always had a dominant linebacker. It's part of what the fan base wants to see, but it's a different NFL, and paying a linebacker, a position that doesn't impact the quarterback the way an edge rusher does, that much money, it's less than ideal. But again, when these are the contracts we're saying aren't the best, $18 million for a 24-year-old linebacker, okay, fine. This is a good free agent class. There are plenty of good deals. I am proud of the NFL and what it has accomplished here. At cornerback, our top move has to be Stephon Gilmore to the Dallas Cowboys. Absolutely bargain bin. Didn't have to give up a lot to get him, and only $10 million to have a lockdown corner opposite Trayvon Diggs. Stephon Gilmore, Trayvon Diggs, absolutely lockdown. Gilmore is the technical lockdown guy. He's going to have the shadow. He's going to mirror the guy. He's going to have the pass breakups. He's just going to lock players down. Whereas Diggs, he might get burned because he's taking gambles, but Trayvon Diggs is going to make the quarterback pay. These guys are going to impact the quarterback position on defense. This is what you need. You need impact plays to keep up with Patrick Mahomes, impact plays to keep up with Josh Allen. Dallas Cowboys, they get a cornerback duo, much like the Philadelphia Eagles last year, that can lock people down. And speaking of the Philadelphia Eagles, that will bring us to safety, and that will bring us to our best move at safety and possibly the best move of the offseason period. Now, I don't want to go that far. I don't want to oversell it, but come on. The Detroit Lions have absolutely crushed it in free agency. This is just a fact. And the fact that they can get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the interception leader from last year, despite only playing 12 regular season games. Come on. CJ Gardner-Johnson for $8 million, a one-year deal. This is a blessing for the Detroit Lions. This is an absolute miracle. I cannot believe this happened. And how did it happen? Well, the Philadelphia Eagles, they offered CJ Gardner-Johnson a long-term deal. It was rumored a 5-year deal. We don't have that confirmed. Could have been 3-4 years, but regardless, Eagles offered CJ Gardner-Johnson a long-term contract. He hemmed and hawed over it, thought that his market would be bigger than it was. And because CJ Gardner-Johnson took so long to decide and accept that contract, it was pulled off the table. Sorry, man, we couldn't wait anymore. We signed Darius Slay. We signed James Bradbury. We made the decision that your replacement, Reed Blankenship, for what we're going to pay him to have these two corners, we're good. We'll find another bargain safety because there's a lot of good deals. Jordan Poyer, just over $6 million. Nick Scott, $4 million for the Bengals. Yeah, we'll take our chances on the free agent market, and you go ahead and walk CJ Gardner-Johnson. We're not paying you what you wanted. So the Lions scoop CJ Gardner-Johnson up, one of the most electric playmakers on defense. You pair him with Kirby Joseph, another electric playmaker, a guy who picked Aaron Rodgers off 4 times. Only 3 of them counted, but 4 times total. Whew! The Detroit Lions crushing it once again. I know I'm biased as a Lions fan, but anyone out there will tell you the Detroit Lions are having one of the best off seasons in the NFL.